Hello everyone, Matt Gemmell here once again. It's been a wee while. This is a sort of quick life update video. Let me state up front explicitly, everything's absolutely fine. I'm aware that life update is often a sort of title used in the kind of video that announces an upheaval or a tragedy or something like that. Quite often with this specific news kept to the end of the video in order to make sure everyone watches it for metrics and monetization reasons, which is vampiric and maybe even sociopathic, or at least narcissistic. It's a troubling practice. That's not this at all. It is in fact a way for me to ease back into making videos since there's been a wee gap, and also genuinely to give updates on a few things that may be of interest to you, since you presumably either subscribe to this channel on YouTube or to my social media accounts, which will link to this video. So it's a life update in the proper sense. I'm fine, my family's fine, everything's going great, nobody's ill, no one's passed away, no one's getting divorced or anything like this. We all love each other, everything's grand. So that's out of the way. I'm sure there'll be a drop off in the percentage of video watched metrics because of that, but so be it. I was recently driven to upgrade some of my camera gear, which is also a reason that I'm trying to get back into this. Although transparently to you, since the camera and the lens are exactly the same, it's just a few additional accoutrements, nice monitors and various handles and gadgets and what have you. So that's quite exciting. I'm just looking down at my Supernote here. Of course, I'm still using these things every single day. Love them so much. I've got the Nomad, 2 Mantas over there. I know, ridiculous. I use them for different purposes, but this thing comes with me constantly. I take it when I'm taking my son to his classes. I take it with me, jot down some notes there, take it up and down the stairs. I have it in my office, I have it in the kitchen. I would not want to be without it. If you're on the Supernote platform or thinking about getting on the platform, there's been a significant OS update recently with expansions to, well, there's text boxes in the Notes app, which is, potentially very useful, particularly since you can use the text boxes for titles in the list at the side. I know people have been wanting the sort of neat non-handwritten titles for a while, but the biggest part of the update, which relates to text boxes, is to the digest feature, which is Supernote's name for making a particular kind of highlight in PDFs, or collecting extracts, collecting quotations and all of that. There's been a huge expansion to that with manual entry of digest items without having to actually select them from an external document first. You can just create them. Categorization, the ability to create a quotes category specifically, which can show on the screensaver thing in rotation, and of course the ability to both import and export in plain text format collections of these digest entries, to of course mark something in a note as a digest entry, which will automatically be recognized from your handwriting and put wherever you wish, and of course conversely to insert digest entries into a note document that you've already collected elsewhere. So the main reason for the workflow is so that you can basically do a pass through a document or multiple documents, extracting stuff into a master list, and then sort of deal with it by collating it and, remarking upon it, expanding upon it in a note later. So particularly if you're a multiple device person, that's massively useful, particularly since Supernotes don't have a split screen interface at this moment. So that's quite significant. I have been doing a wee bit of software development lately. Those of you who know me from the sort of e-ink space, or of course as a writer, as a novelist, may not realise that my background is in software engineering. I have a degree in computing science, and it was my job and my great passion for many a year. And you never really get rid of that, nor should you. So one of the things that I've been feeling that I should do and that I want to do, and that I have been doing in recent months, is trying to keep all my writing and publishing application agnostic, with a view to consequently and eventually, potentially even being platform agnostic. Now, I'm a huge lover of Ulysses, the app, which is an Apple platform's Mac, iPad, iPhone application for writing in plain text, Markdown by default, and exporting from there to printable formats or EPUB books. And excuse me, several of my books have been written there. Love it. It's fantastic. I've created syntax highlighting schemes and publishing styles, as they call it, to create nicely formatted 5x8 paperbacks and ebooks as well in the EPUB 3 format. And you know, it's fantastic, but it is of course dependent on your continued access to a subscription-based application. Don't have a problem with subscriptions in principle. I certainly know that they create a sustainable revenue stream which allows continued development and investment. I'm okay with that. The problem with subscriptions can of course be their proliferating and cumulative nature, but if you're selective, then it's a fine model. You get updates quicker, not waiting a whole year for a big 0.0 update where you suddenly get everything at once. I think it probably leads to more stable software because a trickle of smaller updates tests more stuff in the field. I don't know what the data would show on that, but the subscription side isn't the sort of the tripping point or the stumbling block for me. It's the proprietary nature of the storage of the data. It's just going to make me a bit more uneasy than it did before. I think particularly since moving from the iPad back to the Mac again, which is substantially more open. It's comparative, but it's substantially more open. And I think there was a feeling in the iPad, if I'm accepting this platform where everything's proprietary and everything's locked, then what's the harm? Whereas now, freeing myself from proprietary workflows and databases or whatever file packages is feasible, I'm able to exercise my tendency toward that. So I have created a number of things which you can find on my GitHub. I know I should move away from GitHub. Accounts, including a Pandoc based publishing system, Pandoc being an open source document converter, which can take in a great many text-based and maybe some binary, I don't know, formats and generate a great many other ones. It's fantastic for producing, in my case and in particular, PDFs for print for books and EPUB 3 ebooks. And I've created a sort of wrapper for that which adds a huge amount of functionality and makes it much easier to get in my humble opinion, beautifully formatted, print-ready books in a variety of trim sizes, and of course the EPUB equivalents thereof. And in doing so, as I think software people often do, I found myself feeling the need for a couple of ancillary projects which fed into that, including something called Figuremark, which is a sort of microsyntax to allow the annotation of text-based figures, in the sense of like showing an example of something, within Markdown or potentially other plain text documents. So you might be in a situation where you're writing a book, say, that wants to teach a programming language, or that breaks down and analyzes maybe some prose or some poetry or a quotation or something, where you're going to have text that you're quoting or showing as an example, and you want to annotate within it to say, you know, this is point one, or this is sort of significant, and this is added in this step, and this has been removed in this step, and so on. It's an abstract concept, but you'll see from the documentation if you look, it's pretty flexible. It's got a lot of power, and I found it hugely useful, even in documenting itself. And in a couple of other things. So annotation of figures, all of this stuff's open source, of course, GPL3. And so, you know, you can do what you wish with it. The second ancillary project for the publishing system that I found myself wanting was the creation of indexes. Indexes in the back of a book sense. This is fabulous, by the way. A book on the history of the index in the back of a book sense. It sounds dry as hell, but it's actually it's quite a sort of sprightly, agile, witty, very human thing. I highly recommend it to you. I didn't know anything really about indexes before I embarked on this project, other than, of course, how to use them, and having crawled through a great many of them. So I duly educated myself on, you know, how they work and how they should work and how they should be formatted and so on, and created a project. It's another microsyntax called text index, which for the programmers amongst you is sort of a slight, a double meaning there, but it allows you in a Markdown or any plain text document, as you go through, to annotate things which will then be added as entries in an index. And of course, it can insert such an index into the document wherever you wish. And there's a lot of power in it. I read up about the LaTeX way of doing it, and of course Microsoft Word's way of doing it, and so on and so forth. Read these tomes about, you know, the functionality that needs to be available, and text index quickly became pretty advanced. I'm very pleased with it. Open source, again, it's useful not just for print, but for online as well. It generates sort of hyperlinked versions if you're exporting to HTML-derived formats. And of course, those are direct links. It can do section-based numbering. And of course, if you're exporting to print, then because of the wonders of modern CSS and the generated content model, it can generate real page numbers as well for your printed documents or you know, printable PDFs. So that's pretty cool. You might be interested to have a wee look at that. The main reason you might be interested in what I'm saying here at all, however, is probably the writing, of course, excuse me, which continues on. I've got two projects sort of in progress at different stages. One which is very much in the writing through stage, and a second, which is in the planning and outlining stage, queued up after that aforementioned current one. The one that's, you know, in the writing phase at the moment is a new thing. Not just obviously in the sense of being a new work, but not from a series or whatever that you're familiar with already. So that is, it's wonderful for me because my apologies, my favourite genre is one that's expressed more commonly in the weekly stories that I do, these once upon a time free weekly stories, which you can get in your inbox by signing up on my site if you wish. There's well over 200 of them now. And that genre is the sort of like weird supernatural-y type fiction. I grew up, at least in my sort of teenage years, reading lots of Stephen King and Dean Koontz and so on. And I've always had a huge love for that genre. Perhaps because it was the way I was first exposed to, novels of significant length, and it was a sort of my fiction awakening, as it were. And although I read a great many other genres, loads of sci-fi and thrillers and espionage stuff, even some fantasy, etc. I have a huge love for that. And I have written Middle Shade Road, a sort of horror novel, but going more towards the genre, supernatural / horror, it's maybe a wee bit surprising that I've come this far down the road without seriously embarking on a novel or novel series of that kind. So that's what the current project is. Very exciting. The one that's in the planning stages will be more familiar to you if you have read my work. So no spoilers or anything, of course, but that is very much happening. So stay tuned and all that, and I'll have more to tease you with and reveal in due course. So I think that's about it. I'm going to, as I say, ease myself back into making these videos a bit more often, get back into the editing. I was so used to the iPad Pro based workflow with Final Cut on the iPad, which is both a lovely editing experience and a huge pain with its lack of presets and its ultra opinionated way of doing things. Apple giveth and Apple taketh away. Being back in the Mac now with this insane machine, it's the presently top of the line 16-inch M4 MacBook Pro with everything maxed except the internal storage. I've got external stuff for that, and DaVinci Resolve Studio. So it is like stumbling upon an oasis after years in the desert with respect to video editing functionality. And of course I've got all the trackballs and gadgets and macro pads and what have you. So yes, it's something I'm settling back into. I shall get this up on YouTube, and there will be more updates in due course. And once again, a life update without tragedy, disaster, upheaval, abandonment, or any of the rest of it. Here's hoping that catches on. Thank you very much for watching once again, of course, and take care.